Okay, guys. So we're sitting here looking at a 3800, and this is a 2005 Grand Prix, and it has 235,000 miles. I started getting a little bit of a coolant leak over here last week, and the consensus was that it was likely going to be due to the coolant elbows. Now, if we just get in here and take a look, I'll take off this cover. If we get in here and take a look, you'll be able to kind of see what I was dealing with. So, if you look down in there on top of, you might be able to see it right down in there. So you can see how it's a little bit wet. You may even be able to see down in between the elbow. This is the elbow right here, right down in there. You might be able to see how it's a little wet. So what this is caused by, we originally thought was because of the coolant elbow itself. So I replaced it. You can see it's the new aluminum one. But that unfortunately did nothing. There you go. Now it's probably a better view to see what you can see how wet it is there. Unfortunately, I still had the leak. So I went ahead and you can see I got some RTV all over that elbow. So I went ahead then and tackled the front. You might be able to see it if I get the light just right. I went ahead and tackled that timing cover gasket, and you'll be able to see it right there below. Right there below the elbow, you can see that gray sticking up right there at the corner of the elbow. Straight down from there, you'll be able to see that little bit of gray material. That is a combination of the gasket and the RTV that I used on the new timing cover gasket. And unfortunately, that did not solve my problem either. So I ended up taking it over to a shop down the street with a minor coolant leak. Now before, the coolant was leaking from back over here, and I could see it smoking from behind the tensioner from this mount here, which is why we really thought it was those coolant elbows. Realistically, I think it was the timing cover gasket back there somewhere where you just can't see because you have to remove the alternator, you gotta remove the tensioner pulley, you gotta remove everything over here to get to that thing. Unfortunately, I still had the leak, so we ended up taking it over to a shop and they pressure tested it, and unfortunately, it's the lower intake manifold gasket. So it's kind of all down there in the same area that we're fighting with here, and and unfortunately, it's not difficult. I don't think it's just time consuming. And like I said, this is an 05 Grand Prix with 235,000 miles, and I was quoted $1,400 to replace the lower intake manifold gasket. They would replace the plenum gasket, which is between here and the intake. They would replace the throttle body gasket, spark plugs, plug wires. These have never been changed, I don't think. They're OEM for sure. They may have been changed once. I did the plugs. I did not do the plug wires several years ago. And so for the $1,400, they were going to knock out those things, and I went ahead and did some quick math, and it's only about $200 or $300 in parts. I'm fairly. So I was quoted $1,400 to do the lower intake manifold, the plenum gasket, the throttle body gasket over there, new plug wires, new spark plugs, and then 2 coolant flushes. The previous owner had put a bunch of stop leak down in here, and I'm not exactly sure how they were able to tell, probably because it looks disgusting in there. That's probably how they can tell there's some stop leak in there. Either that or that's just what the Dex Cool is doing. This has not been converted to the green coolant yet, which is something I plan to do. So so anyway, after being quoted $1,400, I decided that I will try to tackle it myself. Now I'm fairly well versed and I've got access to quite a few tools, so I'm not too worried about doing this. And again, it's a 2005 Grand Prix. It's got 235,000 miles on it. So what I'm looking to do here is just not put a bunch of money into it. The other reason is that we are going to be giving this car to a family that lives near me that could use a reliable means of transportation. They've got several kids, and my in-laws help them in terms of making sure the kids are keeping up in school, and they just kind of helping them kind of get back on their feet again. So, we just figured it'd be a good thing to do to give them something that is reasonably reliable. This is a GT2, I think. So it's got the leather interior, the heated seats, the heads-up display. It's fairly well optioned, but it just has a lot of miles. I have a pretty decent highway commute. But outside of this leaking intake manifold gasket, it's in pretty good shape. New brakes all the way around, and it's been pretty well cared for. I think I'm the third owner of it, and I literally drive it back and forth to work, and whenever we take our dog somewhere, we take her in this. So there's no need for me to have anything too fancy as it relates to that. So anyway, we are going to go ahead and knock out so you can maybe see in there that the oil pump is actually pumping some oil up there, because you can see it pooled up in there. It does have a bit of a lifter tick right now, and while I have all of this in here, I may try to see if I can figure out which lifter it is that's giving me that little bit of a ticking noise. We may put some oil additive in here to see if that helps clear it up. I made a mistake when I put that timing cover back on, and I put that spring that goes on the on that oil filter housing. I put the spring in there backwards, and so as the pump was building pressure, rather than that spring opening to let oil flow through the filter, since it was in there backwards, it couldn't open it. So, and it only ran for a couple of minutes that way before I finally caught what it was doing. But now I've got this little bit of a lifter tick, and but we'll get that sorted. I don't think that's going to be a permanent issue. So anyway, my goal for this video is that you guys will have some confidence to tackle this job yourself. There's tons of videos on this exact job. This 3800 is well documented on YouTube, but most of those videos are older and lower quality, so I figured and now might be a good time to put a higher quality video up there, and yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. So I'll show you on this one. You guys may not be able to see that. Okay. So this green little tab here will allow you to push up on it. Okay, so now it's released that. Now this little gray tab up here, you can push down on. So let me get my thumb on it. You push down on it, and it just snaps off. So pop that back, and then thumb down on this green tab, and you can see what it's doing. It's levering that thing right there and allows you to pull it back out. Alright guys, so starting up here, this is day number 2. This is actually going on during the coronavirus quarantine, so I've got a little bit of free time, and so that's the reason why I'm deciding to tackle this now. So far I think I've got everything disconnected, so we just gotta work on getting the fuel rails taken up, which there are a lot of videos online in terms of how to do this on the Series 2. This is the Series 3 that has the aluminum plenum, and so I'm just kind of struggling to figure out how exactly this comes off, but we'll give it a look over and we'll figure it out, and then once we get that out of the way, we can start to remove the plenum here, and then we can start to work our way down to the actual intake manifold. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so just to give you guys a little bit of an update, we'll take off the thermostat there. Then we've got some bolts here. I guess the thermostat doesn't have to come off now, but I'll just probably take it off just to get out of the way. And then, yeah, so we've got handful of little guys to take off, and then the that vacuum line right there. And then it looks like this plenum will come off. So, I'm not sure what size those are, but I think they're... And then below that, you got another 10 mil. Yeah. Alright, so you got a little 10mm nut over here on this far side. I'm not sure what sensor this is. That might be a PCV valve. Once you take off that nut that gets that little bracket off of there, then you got a 10mm underneath that needs to come out. So far, that's the only 10mm that I've got on this plenum. The rest of them have been 8mm. That one's 8, 8, 8. So the rest of them that I can see so far are all 8. Let's see what happens if I just help her a little bit here. There we go. Just need a little bit of help. Alright. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick her up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick her up. This gasket don't even look that old. Oh. I think I see the problem here. All right. So what's happening is I'm getting hung up, unfortunately, on this idler pulley, or this tensioner assembly back here, which I've become a professional at popping this guy out. It's not even that big of a deal. So 315 millimeter bolts down here. You probably can't even see what I'm doing. If you've had to replace the coolant elbows, you know all about this part, because that is exactly what the coolant elbows go into. So now the fun stuff. There you can see some oil pooling, all that carbon buildup. But as you can see, if you look at the outer rim of where that plenum was sitting, nothing. Nothing was leaking out of there. Maybe it, well, that's the PCV right there, but you can see a little bit, light here. You can see a little bit of that murky, you can tell some coolant had gotten in there. But otherwise, this is just pure oil, just carbon buildup. You can see down into the valves in there. But we'll get all that cleaned up. So then, to get that head off of there, I'm sorry, head, to get that intake manifold off of there, I got a feeling it's going to be a little bit more complicated. Looks like the intake manifold bolts are 3/8. They didn't look like 10 millimeter, but I know I got those two hidden ones in there. Then obviously we got to clean everything up. That's the part that's going to blow. But making progress here. I would be more concerned about this next step here if there were more coolant in the system, but I know the system is basically dry. So when I take this off, I'm not really expecting it to leak a whole lot out. Like I thought, dry as could be. Now, so 195, and that actually makes sense why I never have any problem. I mean, this doesn't even look that old or bad either. So that was replaced at some point. I'll have to replace the gasket for sure on the housing here. But, oh, there is no gasket. I guess it's all just right there as a part of that thermostat. Alright, so we are going to continue where we left off by going ahead and getting that intake off of there. We got a few bolts to remove, and then we'll pop that off there. We'll clean it up quite a bit, and we will see just how that's going to look when we're all said and done. Okay. Bring you guys in here to see this. So as you can see there, we got some coolant. They had told me that a bunch of stop leak had been put in this car. You can even see some more of it right there. But it's hard for me to tell exactly because you can still see some of that surface is dry, but then it looks really wet right there. So it's hard for me to say for sure if that's because of what I just did by taking that part out of there. I mean, that bolt is right there is full of water. Or is that where the leak was at? It does seem like right around there is probably where it failed at. Let's see what this one looks like. Yeah. So if you just compare the way that edge right there looks compared to this one over here where we had no leaks, I think it's safe to say that it was failing over here. So that's going to be fun to clean off. I have a similar problem down here to clean out. But we'll get it all cleaned up and we'll start putting it back together. Okay, so what we're going to do today then is we are going to put the intake manifold back on. So what you guys have missed is that I put the valve covers back on. You can see I got the new O-rings around the bolts there, and so I've cleaned up the surfaces on both the intake and on the heads there. So we're going to go ahead and start throwing that back together. Okay, so what you guys probably missed was me putting everything back together, which obviously was essentially just in reverse of everything that you saw me do when taking it apart. So one thing that I did struggle with a little bit was the fuel rail and just getting everything to seat properly. You know, replacing the O-rings is not that big of a deal, but something you definitely want to make sure that you do. I'm going to go ahead and zip tie everything up, but you know, just to kind of clean it up a bit. But at this point, we've got everything put back together, and so we're going to go ahead and start it and let it run. And I've got my cap off the radiator over here that you can see. You can see how nasty that cap is from the Dex Cool just not really being maintained well, and that's partially on the previous owner, partially on me. I'm converting it over to green, and then you can see right there the bleed screw on the thermostat. So we're going to go ahead and try to get the air out of the system, and then we'll see how that goes. That chirp that you can hear is coming from the alternator pulley. I sprayed a little bit of lubricant on there and the noise went away. So I probably need to get in there and replace that pulley. But she's idling good. Sounds great. Everything, no leaks. If you look over here, you can see that I replaced the water pump gasket as well. You can see that's blue gasket, not fresh RTV, but over here is where I had the leaks before, and you really can't, I can't see anything leaking. So I think all my leak problems have been solved, and now it's just a matter of getting the air out of the system, and then we should be good, I'm hoping. Worst case scenario is that the heater core needs to be flushed, which honestly wouldn't surprise me in the least bit, but it's definitely something I don't feel like dealing with. So we're going to go ahead and wait and let this thing warm up, and we're going to see what happens.